Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with our library tour. We're in the darkest depths of Mordor. this recessed shelves section here in the wall of this room. And we're doing the top shelf, and on the top shelf I have stuffed out of sight virtually all of the mass market paperbacks that I still own. Used to have only mass market paperbacks with a tiny handful of hardcovers and trades. Now it's the reverse, and I don't consult these things as often as I used to. I barely ever reread them. But some of them I just don't have the heart to get rid of, so I've sort of put them out of sight, up in the shadowy top shelf. You know, it's a good meter tall up on the top there, and only the first few bits of it are visible when you look at it in the light of the day. It is effectively getting rid of these books, and that ought to be a lesson to me. I ought to just listen to that and get rid of these books and make space on these shelves for stuff that I will go back to. The whole point, we want to remember here, my BookTube comrades, the whole point of your library should be that these are the books you go back to. These are the books you actually use, consult, regularly enjoy. If you are, I know I'm in the worst possible position to lecture on this, but still, it's a goal, it's a dream. If you have a large number of books in your library that don't fit that description, you should get rid of them. I'm getting rid of them. These bookshelves really help with that. So let's go on with the next bit of these from Mordor. Okay, and you'll notice some of these have been here forever, and some of them are fairly relatively recent acquisitions from 2019. When I would see a mass market paperback or two or three or five and want them and get them, and these are two of those. These are C.S. Forster, his Horatio Hornblower series. This is from a series of Pinnacle paperbacks that came out probably 50 years ago. This is two. Hornblower During the Crisis and Beat to Quarters, which is, I think, the best Horatio Hornblower novel. And they have these fantastic nautical illustrations on the cover, and the feature that I like about these, the ones that say that they have this big thing, Hornblower Saga, up at the top, rather than the title. The title is the least conspicuous thing on the cover of any one of these things. And in an ordinary paperback, the title, Beat to Quarters, would be this thing. But instead, the Pinnacle reversed it, and I rather like that idea. And the feature that I like most about these Pinnacle mass markets is that the artwork continues on the back without interruption, without marring by blurbs or dust jacket copy or anything like that. I really like that, so I have these two. But as far as I know, I don't have any others. So, okay, all right. And then these three are ones that we have seen in 2019. I got these in Vermont. I got these while book hunting with Mark Richardson of Richardson Reads. These are Robert E. Howard books that aren't Conan. And they have, each one has a poster, a fold-out poster on the inside. See that? I don't know what you'd use that poster for. You couldn't actually mount it and make anything of it, but they all have that. And I got these up in Vermont a few months ago. I reread them immediately as soon as I got them back here. And then up here they went into Mordor. I just chucked them into Mordor. Okay, all right. We have a Star Trek novel from probably 30 years ago. When was this? When did this come out? 1994. 1994, 2004, 2014, 2024. It's getting on there. This is Barbara Hanley. This is Crossroad, and it doesn't even have a cover. In 1994, I was working in a retail bookstore, and one of the many, many, many disastrous business policies that are just normal at a retail bookstore is stripped copies. Mass market paperbacks, the bookstore can get their full money back for unsold copies, which is insane right there on its face. Where's your incentive to do anything other than make sure you box them up in a certain amount of time? The retail stores have a window where they can take unsold copy let's concentrate on mass market paperbacks. They can take unsold mass market paperbacks and send them back for a full refund. But they don't have to send back the whole book. They just have to send back the barcode on the front cover. So what those bookstores have done for the last 30 years, since this disastrous idea was put in place, is to strip the front cover off, make a stack of those, and mail those back to the publisher. And the stripped books just get thrown away. Some of them, every once in a while, some of those stores will make some of those stripped copies available to their employees to just, take. And for years and years and years at the old Barnes and Noble. I worked at a Barnes and Noble for ever and ever, an old dilapidated store, only the fourth one in the country, in downtown Boston. And for years and years and years, I made sure to go through those boxes and boxes of stripped mass market paperbacks and pick out the good stuff, the mass markets that were actually good, and recommend them to my coworkers so they didn't have to prowl through all the boxes. I was happy to do that myself. It's not like I was going to work anyway. But even while I was doing that, I realized how incredibly wasteful it is. Bookstores should be responsible for their product. And if publishers aren't, if publishers are responsible for taking those returns of unsold property back, well, publishers are not philanthropic organizations. They're going to pass the cost of all of that along to you, and they have, which is why a mass market paperback just like this now costs $10. Anyway, this is just one Star Trek novel. I have no idea why it's here. I remember the book. It's not remarkable in any way. I don't know why I have it. No idea what it's doing here with all these other things. Okay, and then we have M.K. Wren. It's a shame that this series isn't better known. This is the Phoenix Legacy trilogy, written by an author named M.K. Wren. It's classic Dune style, far future, multi-empire, noble houses, galactic soap opera, but very good, very well done. The first book is Sword of the Lamb. The third book is House of the Wolf. And the second book is Shadow of the Swan, but for some reason I have a second copy of Sword of the Lamb in these great old 1980s, 1970s paperback covers. You just don't get covers like this anymore, mainly because you would have to pay what you can't afford anymore for cover art. And of course, finding these two things here makes me wonder if Shadow of the Swan is somewhere in the darkest depths of Mordor. I guess we'll find out together. Why I have two copies of the first book and no copy of the middle book, I don't know. The chances of me ever reading House of the Wolf without reading the whole series is infinitesimally small. Okay, all right. We saw these already. We saw the first of these. This is Rob Thurman, and let's see here. I'm not 100% sure what this is called. No. Okay. Well, anyway, this is Rob Thurman. He did a series of urban vampire novels that I like as candy. I like them just fine. We saw the first one, Nightlife, I think it was called, or something like that. And this is a whole bunch of others. This is Death Wish. They all have the same cover artist, whose name is escaping me at the moment, even though he's one of my favorite currently working cover artists. This is Roadkill. Let's see here. Double Take. They're about sexy young vampires. These books are about sexy young vampires, in case you didn't guess that already. And Blackout. And it's kind of bothered me that I don't have the cover artist's name right on the tip of my tongue. That's bothering me because I really like to give credit to cover artists. Now the copyright information in these volumes anyway does not tell who the cover artist is. But if I remember, I will find it, because you've seen this person's artwork before. I know you have. If you read science fiction and fantasy, you've seen the work. I think it's a man and an American, but it's escaping me at the moment. Okay, this next book is old. This is probably 70 years old. This is by Joseph Dean. It was an old Penguin paperback. It's called Hatred, Ridicule, or Contempt. And it's all about libel cases. And it draws from court extracts, so you get lots and lots of fun stuff. For some reason, I have two copies. But this is just classic. In mid-century Britain, paperbacks like this with extracts and quotes from from famous trials or infamous trials and stuff like this were all the rage. People loved it. The court humor is very dry and very good. This is a very enjoyable thing to read. Believe it or not, you wouldn't think so. A book of libel cases, but it is. Oh, all right. Okay, this is Pamela Service, who wrote a YA novel called The Reluctant God. I believe there was even a sequel to this. But I didn't want the spell to be broken. I thought this was a very good YA novel about, as you can see, a teen girl who encounters a teen hottie revived mummy. Go figure. He's got bandages on, but he also has a headdress on, which mummies didn't have. Never mind. Never mind. It doesn't matter. But I liked it anyway, even though it's as ridiculous as it sounds. I still liked it. Okay. All right, talk about as ridiculous as it sounds. I will go to my grave defending this next book, and no one will ever believe me. This is Hank Searle's novelization of Jaws 2. And you might think, all right, well, Jaws was a novel and was critically well regarded before it became a movie, and the movie is widely regarded as great. But Jaws 2 is just a sequel, just a dumb rubber shark sequel, and whoever the publisher got to write the novelization from the screenplay will just have been doing it for money. Hank Searle was certainly writing this for money. But this is still good. This is still a really good novel. And no one ever believes me. They won't even open it to start it, to see if maybe it is. It carries forward a lot of the same themes that were in Jaws, that didn't make it into the movie, and it deepens them, especially organized crime in Amity. And some of the scenes that are really effective in the movie Jaws 2, I'm assuming that you have all seen Jaws 2, even if it was just to laugh at it, even though it's a wonderful movie. In my opinion, every bit as good as the original, only without the hammy overacting. Sorry, of those of you who worship at the altar of Robert Shaw, I don't want to jinx the whole thing, but come on. Anyway. All of the scenes from that original movie are in this book. There are more scenes. There's a whole subplot with a baby seal, that is so terrified that it refuses to go back in the water. And it takes Brody and his family and whatnot, and the reader, a bit of time to realize why. What would cause that? What could be so unthinkably frightening? But also, in the scenes in this book that correspond to scenes in the movie, a lot of times Hank Searle improves on them. Like, for instance, the signature scene from the cover, and the signature scene from the whole of the movie, which is the girl who is eaten while she's water skiing. In the movie, that is very effectively done. An older female friend of hers is driving the boat, and we get some very good visual effects of the fin moving so fast that water is spraying off it like a speedboat. And there's also a wonderful directorial decision where when the girl goes missing and her friend swings the boat around and the shark attacks the boat, the woman accidentally drenches herself and the shark in gasoline and accidentally sets it on fire. And there's a very good directorial moment where we see the explosion from a great distance. We see the explosion from a peaceful little cottage with a little old lady watching from a distance. And that somehow brings the moment home a lot better. It's an effective moment in the movie, and it's even more effective in the book. None of you will believe in this, I know, but I'll have my say. In the book, Hank Searle has the pilot of the boat be a man who knows the girl, who they're romantic partners, and he has the man see the shark. She doesn't see it, but he sees it coming behind her. And it makes an already effective scene 10 times more effective. And it goes throughout there. There's a subplot, like I mentioned, with a seal. There's a subplot with a corrupt New York City cop, which causes immediate thematic echoes with Brody, who, remember, did not grow up on Amity Island, was a city cop of his own. Just, I enjoyed it as a book. It was genuinely enjoyable. I don't know how many copies I've given to people hoping that they'll give it a try. I don't think anyone ever has. But that's okay. That's okay. All right. This next one is A.C. Bradley, who did a famous book, Shakespearean Tragedy, one of the most famous books about Shakespeare that's ever been written, even though it's also been extensively mocked. How many children hath Lady Macbeth? That sort of thing. A.C. Bradley was the one who sort of popularized that kind of census-taking Shakespeare criticism. Shakespearean Tragedy is a fantastic book. It is a Penguin classic that I do not have. I wish I had a Penguin classic of that book. But this is the author's lectures on poetry, and they include just wonderful, wonderful stuff. This is from the era when lecturers were stars, and when you could easily expect them to walk into their lecture halls with no notes and deliver an hour-long address that would be worthy of being written down and included in a book. And that's true here. This is these old St. Martin's paperbacks. Some of you who've been maybe, for instance, watching Richardson Reads, Mark Richardson just found a bunch of, I believe he just found a bunch of these old St. Martin's paperbacks that look very similar to this. They're just the shabbiest books in the world. The paper is all ration pulp. The binding is terrible. The covers are very weak cardboard. I don't know that this could survive one more reading, and I don't know that I will ever see this in any form other than this. So I kept it because I like Bradley. I really do. I know that he's largely a figure of fun now in Shakespeare studies because that book sold 1 billion copies and yet is a bit reductive. But I think it's a wonderful introduction to Shakespeare. It really gets a reader who doesn't know or already loves Shakespeare thinking about Shakespeare's world and his thought. And I love him on poetry, even when I don't agree with him. The lectures on poetry are very much the bloated old man type thing. But those can still have wonderful gems in them. I have a lot of books like that. And then the last book for this time around is the Fontana Library. I believe it was UK mass markets from ages ago. This is probably 50 years old, this mass market. The book came out in 1958. This mass market came out in 1970. So that's a very long time, and this thing is still around and still usable. This is P Kenyon, who was, the Fontana Library mostly got first-rate, front-of-the-pack historians to do these things. They did a series on the ruling houses of England. Very, very simplistic, very formulaic, very cut and dry. This is the Stuarts. And there are all sorts of... Do I have a list of all the others here? They did the Saxon and the Norman kings. They did the Plantagenets. They did the Tudors. Christopher Morris's book on the Tudors is wonderful. They did the first 4 Georges, which is by J.H. Plum, and which is the best book in the series. And Hanover to Windsor by Roger Fulford. And in all cases, the authors, we've talked about this kind of thing before, whether Penguin does it or anything else. When you have a series like this, and the briefs are very cut and dry, the briefs are almost write themselves. We have a series on the ruling houses of Britain, or on the great novelists of the 19th century, or whatever the series is, and we want you to write this entry. So, Professor Kenyon, we want to give you a small contract for a book introducing readers to the Stuarts. Nothing could be easier to do than that. Even in the days before Wikipedia, nothing could be easier to do than that. If you're conversant with the subject, you get a brief for Roman emperors or British kings or something like that. You get it down on your knees and thank God, because your electricity bill is paid for the next 3 months. Because it couldn't be easier. All you have to do is knock together the basic facts. And all the authors have to do in series like this is do that. And the mark of whether or not you want to keep the series for 50 years is if they do more than that. Is if they realize that this is not going to work for anyone, really, as an introduction to the Stuarts or anything else. So what it should be is an introduction to your thoughts about the Stuarts, your thinking about them, and all of your best one-liners. And when the authors do that, when they realize the lay of the land and write a book like that, the book is precious. Almost all the books in this series are like that. And this one, for some reason, is standing on its own here, but I have all the others. I know that I do somewhere. They aren't the only ones. Right at the same time, there was another series of books on exactly the same thing, The Ruling Houses of England, done by a slightly different selection of authors, but done in the exact same way, and all of those are memorable too. So if you see this at a yard sale, or something like this at a yard sale, or a flea market, or whatever, don't pass it up. It's really, really good stuff, especially the more you know about the subject. And there you go. That is the next shelf in the darkest depths of Mordor. Some gems there, and also some stuff that I just should not be here. so I imagine that'll be par for the course for this whole thing. But we will reconvene tomorrow for another stack of books. It's going to take us forever to get through this top shelf, but you don't seem to mind. So I will wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.